While the sport of gymnastics was an individual sport, there are periods where you do focus on team. It's few and far between when you're out there competing. But at the 1996 Olympic Games, those young women were truly the best competitors that I ever competed with or against in my 18-year career in the sport of gymnastics. Now, if you remember that team known as the Magnificent Seven, I do not know why our agents named us after a Western movie. Like, all of us are like, oh, that's a cool name. But then everyone's like, oh, like the Western movie. We had no clue. We were born in the 70s and 80s. But that team was formed and made history before we walked out in the Georgia Dome. We had to break the mindset of what we had been taught since we started the sport of gymnastics in our training sessions to make history. What do I mean by that? If you would have gone to our practices before the Olympic Games started, you would have never seen us look over at one another and see what each other is doing. We were always taught to have blinders, right? You would have never heard us cheer for one another. You can do this, Carrie. Dom. I love it. There was another Dom. There was no applause, or there was no pat on the back. There was no support. There was no team atmosphere. But all of a sudden, one day, we were taught to pick from an affirmation jar. Do you guys love positive sayings? Women are like, yes. Men are like, why? I already feel great about myself. I'm married to a guy. He feels great. Very great. I have my Post-it notes up, and he's like, yes, yes, and yes, check. I'm like, no, it's for me. And one day we were pulling from an affirmation jar. Cheesy, but it's awesome. Gets your mind right. And one day we picked a saying, team, together, everyone achieves more. We were smart young women. Like, I got a full scholarship to Stanford University. Carrie ended up going to Stanford University. Amanda, graduate of college, and goodness, someone has a law degree. I mean, we were smart girls. But for whatever reason, that saying, a light bulb went off. And we realized, okay, so if we want to make history and be the first ever women's gymnastics team to win gold, wow, and do it in Atlanta, Georgia, no pressure. We need to realize it's not about me, myself, and I. This is not the Dominique Dawes show. This is not the Carrie Strug show. This is not the Amanda Borden show. We need to support one another. And whatever happened from that saying, you would have seen a whole different group of girls step out into that practice facility. You can't wait till you get to the Georgia Dome to be a supportive teammate. You can't wait when it's your opportunity to shine behind bright lights to be a good teammate. It was in the dark when the cameras were not on us. All of a sudden, our blinders that we were trained to have came down, and I looked over at my teammates, and they were friends. They were no longer competitors that day. We needed to lean on one another. All of a sudden, we were cheering for one another in practice. If someone made a mistake or got injured, we were there to support them and lift them up. We actually laughed together. We shared stories about our lives together. We didn't know much about, it was before social media, where we weren't connecting online, when we weren't training together, but we actually talked and got to know one another. And right before marching out the Georgia Dome, we knew we were marching out as one unit. And when I look back at those Olympic Games, which is never, it only happens when my husband decides, and he's probably doing it today, because whenever I'm not in town, he's like, oh, let's watch some footage of mommy back, to kind of clue my kids in on, when mommy was fun or something. But when I look back, we were one unit. There was no totem pole mentality where someone's better than the other. Everyone brought value to the table. Everyone. Shannon Miller and her consistency, Amanda Borden and her positivity in being a team captain, J.C. Phelps, Amy Chow, Dominique Motiano, Carrie Strug, and myself found a way to put our egos aside and do what was best for the team.